Welcome.
Welcome
To celebrate.
To celebrate.
Holly.
Welcome to Celebrate Story.
with my mom.
My mom.
It's my mom.
With my mom.
With my wife.
Joy Wagner.
Julie Wagner. Julie Wagner.
Julie Wagner.
Why are we recording on Monday instead of last week?
Because, did you already forget what this weekend was? Should we start with what this weekend was?
I put it out of my mind.
You've blocked it?
I pushed it.
You've siloed it off?
I have.
Is it
It
because
had to be done.
it had to be done? It was too painful?
A bit.
Is that your strategy
Yeah,
for
just
dealing with
you
pain?
weren't here.
Because I'm your rock?
Yes.
Okay, so Steve was alone with 8 children. We can't even say 8 children anymore because we have 3 teenagers, almost 4 teenagers. So 8 dependents. Steve was home with 8 dependents.
Well, the oldest didn't have hands. I guess that's a story for another day.
He has hands.
The use of his hands.
The use of his hands. The oldest was in an accident. Zach was in an accident, and that was scary.
Yeah.
And fortunately,
He's pretty much okay. He's just really inconvenienced.
yeah, very inconvenienced. So,
Because he has a sprained hand and a broken bone in a hand, and he...
had McKenna to help. McKenna is
That's true.
an endless help. And so she has been helping
So he's in
cut his food.
2 splints, hands wrapped up, so...
Poor Zach. I'm glad it's something that... And
Could have been worse.
Yes. So, okay.
Well,
So
where were you this weekend?
where was I? So I took a very well needed, I think this is your chance to interject, very deserved.
Yeah.
I sounded so defensive. Very deserved. Oh my goodness. If that's not an Enneagram 2 talking about a break they had, I don't know what is. Very deserved. I went away for the weekend and met up with my college bestie in Raleigh. Raleigh is about halfway between for the two of us. So that was so much fun. Our plan was to get years of scrapbooking done. We looked at years of scrapbooking, but didn't accomplish a ton of scrapbooks. But I was telling you, should I tell about my reels? The visual of my reels of how my mental health has changed from like last Monday. So I had this like vision in my head, which I probably will not prioritize the time to create. But
Not
I thought,
everybody does Instagram, though. So
I got to explain Instagram.
a TikTok, a Reels,
Okay.
a YouTube Short.
And we got to expound it even more for like your parents. So,
It's a short video.
well, what I'll just, a Reels to me, why I'm excited about a Reels, which is also a TikTok, it's so fun to me how quickly you can communicate something in 30 seconds when you have not only music, not only the visual, the photography, like the combination of that, like what was available. Like I think back to, my sister and I would pay like $40 at King's Dominion when we were middle schoolers to be able to like sing on camera our favorite song by Belinda Carlisle with like the music and our voices. And it was just like this fun thing. But it was expensive and it was prized and it was special. And it's like, now we have this at our fingertips that we can be our own little creator, producer. Like it's such a fun creative outlet. So of a way to express an experience. For me, that's what's fun. And it's just funny. Some of them are hilarious. So anyways, in my head, I wanted to create this 30-second reels of like, the words on the screen would say the Monday before I went away for the weekend. And then it would have a visual of me laying on the floor completely like barely alive and like with long, slow blinks of intentionality. And then like toys and clothes and shoes all around my head, just like buried in all the tasks, all the things. And maybe kids like grabbing at every limb of my body. So that
I have pictures of that from last week.
You have that already.
I don't think.
And I mean, I feel like there'd be a great song to it, like some sort of song about like there's nothing left. There's it's all over, something like that. Nothing left, empty. Some sort of song that has a deep feeling of emptiness, done, over, hopelessness. And then like, so that was the state of kind of where I was at before I went away. And then this Monday, I noticed the difference because I went out for my run and I had all the energy to be like specifically checking in with each child about my expectations of where their chores and school would be by the time I got back. And I walked back in to a clean kitchen. They'd done their chores and were on their school. And it's like, I could just feel the angels singing. And if I could somehow communicate that other part, see how Reels is so powerful because you could do this in 30 seconds. And even with just language, it's taking me a good over a minute to describe. But then the second half of the Reels clip would be just like all the celebration. And I'm like, that to me, the contrast for me as an Enneagram 2, as someone who thinks her mission in the world is to be a helper, like it drives all my energy. It's why breaks are so important for my mental health because it like helps me step outside and just completely walk away because I can easily get to the point where I'm just drowning. So, but you have to share your funny story about the baking situation because I walked in.
Find it that funny.
I think it's really funny.
It's not really funny.
Oh, but that's because I'm just like high on the weekend away juice.
Well, I went to make something for dinner.
Wait, I just have to clarify. That is metaphorical juice. And what I mean by juice is being alone, having connection time, seeing a beautiful chapel. Okay, you went to make dinner. I just realized it sounded high on juice. It might have sounded like I was insinuating something that was not true.
Okay.
Why did you take a long pause and stare at me?
Comedic effect.
Comedic effect. Okay.
They're all laughing in their cars and on their walks right now.
Or in bed while their spouse is sleeping.
That's right.
They just woke their spouse up.
Yeah, so it wasn't very funny, but I will tell what happened
It's
in
very
our
funny.
kitchen. Whoever baked last. Well, I was making breakfast for dinner. I was using a pancake recipe that had powdered sugar in it. So I went to the pantry, and our powdered sugar baking bin is kind of just above eye level. So I put my hand back and I grabbed it, and I knew I was grabbing the powdered sugar because you could tell. And I just pulled the bag out. And as I pulled the bag out, it was just a plume of powdered sugar.
Told you it was funny.
Smoke just followed in its path, and like I was white from like my neck all the way down to my shoes. And I took it to the countertop, and it just left a trail of powdered sugar all across. And
it's probably funny because it was you and not me.
that's true. Yeah, I heard the equation one time that tragedy. Wait. You plus tragedy minus me equals comedy. I
Yes.
think that's what I heard.
Yes, because it's hilarious, but I feel like it's usually me.
So whoever baked the last time, which I have figured out who it was, and they'll remain nameless here, who later had their baking privileges taken away.
Which the same
period of time.
The same adorable child when I walked in. I have to add this. It adds to the story.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
They opened the bag and then just sat it back in there without closing it up.
With a big old hole.
With big old hole.
Yeah. And that's the story. I feel like the story of our life is some item like that. Like you said right before I left, like nothing is simple around here. Like there's always an open bag or mayonnaise sitting in the garage in the middle of the floor or our cups and bowls outside. Like these are just everyday things around here with the
or
chaos.
You finish repainting and spackling the whole basement, and then you find
a Wii controller.
No, not Wii. Wii was like 15 years ago. 10 years ago.
An Xbox? What are those things?
Controller
Xbox
that's that you look at the wall and there's a hole, a dent, and a line, kind of a line coming out of it, and black next to it, and then you find the Xbox controller, the black Xbox controller that's broken, and then you go to people and say, did somebody throw an Xbox controller at it? Because the edge of the Xbox controller fits perfectly in the spot where the hole is. In the
freshly painted basement that took us weeks.
Oh, it took us years. That's the first thing we wanted to do when we moved
That's
in.
true. It took us 6 years to paint that basement.
2016.
Good point. 6 years.
So but nobody knows what happened. That
No.
Xbox controller's
It
been
flew.
broken for weeks,
It
months.
flew.
So
Miracles happen around here. Xbox controllers fly
this
on their
was
own.
supposed to be funny, but I can feel the tension in my
Yeah,
voice.
I can feel the tension too. But that's perfect because I have quotes about the wisdom of the wilderness and embracing the tension.
You didn't say what the unnamed baker.
Okay, the unnamed
Said to you.
adorable baker who loves to bake. When I walked in, she was happy to see me.
That narrows it down.
We'll get her permission.
Just go.
Okay, we're just going to go.
It was Zadie.
It was Zadie, adorable Zadie. And she was like, "Hi, Mom." I was like, "Hi, Zadie." And she was like, "I haven't fought with anyone all day because I'm getting my baking privileges restored tomorrow."
So Julie just walked in from her getaway for the weekend, had no idea what she was
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
didn't even know. I was like, I was just thrilled she hadn't fought with anybody the whole day because she is a passionate young woman.
She also dropped a rotisserie chicken on the floor that night.
Oh, poor Zadie. That's a rough day. Poor Steve. 8 dependents. Weekend by yourself without your wife, who you absolutely adore her presence.
That's true. It didn't go too badly, though.
I don't know how you made it through without me. Oh, I wish we could communicate that nonverbal look. Okay.
So we also skimmed past something you said earlier. You mentioned something about a chapel.
Yes, that was my favorite part. So we did a just drivable tour through Duke University's campus. I had never seen the campus. Beautiful campus. Like, these buildings are breathtaking. And we ended up finding the chapel. And so, of course, we had to go in, and they didn't have a service going on, but it was open for you to explore some of the stations inside the chapel. And this was the biggest and most intricate chapel that I've ever been into. I've never been into one that large. I've never been into one with that much ornate stained glass windows and decor. It was really, really beautiful. And just that wonderful human sensation of awe and wonder to walk into, like, the sacredness of the space. And we had just missed Kate Bowler earlier that week had spoken at that chapel. She's a professor at Duke, and she just wrote a book called No Cure for Being Human. She's also the author of Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I Believed. And I love her work. I love that she's hitting on this message of, like, what it means to be human. And anyway, so she had there was these stations set up in this chapel and there was music playing, organ music playing, that you could go around and see a little bit more about her work. And I just want to read one of the quotes because I just found it really beautiful. It was also the first, I've never been in a chapel that there was an actual crypt, that, like, a stairwell down, and that the deceased past presidents of Duke University were buried under the chapel, which I'd heard about that, but I'd never been in a chapel like that.
Creepy.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting too. It's so perfect to think about with Lent coming up, because churches used to have cemeteries all around them all the time. And that used to just be a constant reminder, and how that's not popular anymore in American culture. And I think that's interesting because I see a lot of connections in my mind that I want to tease out and chase, of, like, American Christian culture loves to focus on the positive, loves to focus on resurrection. And we have such a hard time sitting in the wilderness, in the death, in the pain. We just, psychologists call it, spiritual bypassing. We want to bypass all the tough stuff. And I just think it's interesting that even our architecture of our churches, like, this is an inevitability. And anyways, I'm going way off track, but I think the connections are interesting, right?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So it is creepy. And then they also had, I didn't want to, like, dismiss what you had said, because I'm all about accepting all experiences. Okay. But they also had a station with candles lit, and you could light a candle and say a prayer, which that to me was so beautiful, like such a meaningful way. Like, what human doesn't cry out and pray? I mean, praying for peace in Ukraine, praying for healing for our sick loved ones. And the weight to me over the last couple of years, as far as my mental health of these things feel heavier than they've ever felt. Steve and I have talked about that some on the podcast. So I just found it really meaningful to be able to light a candle and a symbol of my prayer for my mom and her health. And a friend of ours who has a really tough healing journey he's going through. And I just love that. I love like the concrete tangibility of placing your prayers. I know that's an ancient tradition, but I really enjoyed that experience. That was new to me. So let me read the quotes because I loved chewing on Kate's work, chewing on her work. Maybe that's not the best metaphor. Contemplating Kate's work.
Chewing works. I mean, that's acceptable. I think people understand what you're saying there.
Yeah. Okay. So here it is. So she has this quote, our culture makes it nearly impossible to tell the truth. Sometimes we can fix our lives and sometimes we can't. Our lives and loves are built with paper walls. We will need our neighbors and communities and one another to hold together our collective fragility. As we reach for a world that is more just, more kind, and more whole, we want you to share the pieces of your story. And then there was like a place to invite adding in your story, which was just so beautiful. And I love that. Like I am like a hunter, always scanning the horizon for the stories that have hope, that have fully felt the sadness, stories that have joy, that have fully felt the grief. Because I think one of the things in the last couple of years that I'm trying to practice as far as my mental health is not splitting things off. I was listening to a talk by Richard Rohr called The Power of Paradox. And he was talking about how, it's kind of the American way to we like to split things off into this is the holy group and these are the holy rules and truth is something we hold. We've got it all figured out. Here are the 12 chapters of exactly why my theology is perfect. I'm in, you're out. And the problem is, it's like we are then teaching our children and our next generation this dualistic mindset. And the truth is, none of us are that consistent. There's inconsistencies in all of us. I think as a parent, you have to constantly confront your inconsistencies. I think as a human you do, but I relate so easily to the parenting space because it's literally my life's work at this point. It's like you have to confront, you can be a loving, committed parent and having a slow, steady slog in the same direction of love and intentionality, but you can also act like a total ass to your child sometimes. You want to beep that out? So what I'm getting at here is contemplative thinking, holistic thinking, the both and thinking is what I really am trying to practice more and more in my life because actually it happened recently with, so Steve and I had our first hater on the podcast, which was such an interesting experience. But he taught me a gift about this since I'm wanting to practice and really wanting to integrate what are seeming opposites and really holding space for both of those things in myself and in others. Because again, when I split things off, the othering, the I'm in, you're out is like the beginning of eventual violence is the way I see it. Because it justifies. If I'm in and you're out, I'm justified for how I treat you. Anyways, so here's the story. So a couple weeks ago, Bethany, who's been on the podcast a couple times, if you've heard other episodes, if you haven't, you'll have to check them out. So the Untamed episode is by far our most popular episode. And about 2 weeks after that episode aired, there was kind of a distant past acquaintance she knew that was really unhappy with our podcast. And so he bumped the post up and was like, this is wrong. And he offered like some name calling and explained to us that we were deceived. And, he had like lots of Bible verses describing how wrong we were. And this happened during a particularly tense, and it doesn't take much to get there around here, space. And Steve normally does not touch things like this with a, would you say 1,000-foot pole?
I typically do not argue with people on social media.
He just doesn't. And
it really doesn't typically go anywhere productive.
And what's the point? But before we knew it, Steve and I Steve, am I right?
It consumed 24 hours.
It did. Well, not every second of the 24 hours, but it did take a lot of our energy. But I'm embarrassed by that. I'm embarrassed that I gave that much energy to it, but I'm also grateful because I learned something and I'm getting to what I learned, but I got to tell you the whole story because this is Celebrate Story. I can't just get to the one quote I have on this page. All this is building up to the quote. Okay. So Steve ended up sending me a text and cause I came home from co-op and I was all stressed and kind of just angsty. And I came home and I'm just so frustrated, at the name calling, and I'm frustrated that my energy feels adversarial because I just really want to be at this place where I'm like, we're all on our own journey. It's fine. That's what I want to do, but that is not what's in my body. And so I'm just unloading this to Steve, and he listens dutifully, which is who he is. And I'm I wish you could have seen his eyes. He lifted up his eyebrows on that one. So I'm listening, but then I'm also just still wanting something, do you get like this? I don't know if you listeners are like this, but it's when you're that fired up, you want someone to meet your fire a little bit, catch my fire here. And so anyways, I can't remember where I went. I guess it was whatever it was, running to the grocery store, running a child somewhere who was living their best life while I chauffeur them. And I'm I look at my phone and I see Steve text and he's I've got you. I'm on your side. And he had entered and Steve is just masterful. The thing is, this podcast right now, this episode, I'm talking 95% of the time, but you have so much to offer. And
thanks.
You sounded so insincere.
I don't know.
You felt uncomfortable with me complimenting you publicly, recorded for everyone.
Yes. Everyone's going to hear this unless I edit it out.
Yeah, you could edit it out. But what I'm trying to get at is I'm painfully aware that I talk the most, and we're always working on the dynamic of making space for you to share because you have a lot to share. Because you came in and I feel when Steve talks, it really matters. And it
was beneficial that I didn't have to talk, that it was typing.
Yes.
In the comment section of a Facebook post.
But you're a brilliant, this is what he does with our kids. He is brilliant at seeing every single side and moving people towards peace when he gets involved and moving people towards the contradictions. And so it's he came in and said that, and I felt this sense of yes, mic drop, it's all going to be solved, which is so funny. What is ever?
Which nothing was solved.
Nothing was solved. But it was solved for me. I enjoyed seeing what you wrote. Well, of course, it ended up going on for 2 more days.
87 comments, I think, altogether.
But what's so ironic is it then bumped this post so many times in her feed, which the way Facebook algorithms work, it bumps it in everyone's feed. And we had the highest number of downloads we've ever had for a 2.5-week-old podcast because people are then seeing what are these people debating back and forth about? But I think the thing I'm most grateful for is that there was some things that came out and I was oh yeah, I was really hurt because this happened and I was really hurt because this happened. Some interactions with this person made in the image of God. And it's like, yes, I wasn't at all surprised to hear some of these like, yeah, this is, and it's like boostering me up. Like, yeah, he hurt this person and this person. But I loved that someone sharing their hurt also shared, he gave money, significant money to help someone when they were trying to paint their house, get their house ready. Now there's more to the story, but I'm zeroing in on that because that's the part that for me was so helpful, because I was like, this is how I can get peace. Like, I've let this take over my emotions and my energy, because it's like, this is the first time like we've created this art, and it's a fun place. It's a life-giving place for us, but this was just like deflating the energy. But this is what happens, right? Like, you can't just expect to get in the arena and not get knocked out sometimes. And so it's like,
we did not get knocked out.
We didn't get knocked out, but
I
I'm
think
saying
I won in a split decision. He took all his comments and went and posted them on his own wall just so some people would
yes,
give him his due. So I'm taking the victory.
I mean, what is?
I didn't get knocked out.
I don't think you got knocked out. What I'm saying is, because I am at my core wanting to be understood, and I'm making peace with this like endless desire to be understood. And it's like, it was a wound and a blow to be misunderstood. So that's what I mean but that's the thing I need to continually let go of. Like, I have to accept that some people are committed to misunderstanding me. So when I say the blow and the knockout, I have
to you, not to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, he definitely protected you. There was insults thrown at.
There's definitely
at the women that were involved in the thread, but there were not insults, because he is a firm believer in headship within a Christian marriage. And men are given more leeway. Yes.
In their opinions than women are given.
Yes.
In their opinions.
Which was very triggering for me. I'm like,
Which is why I jumped in, because I figured they all needed protection.
No, you did not. No, you did not.
That is not why I jumped in.
No, you're pointing out the ironicness of it in a humor.
Actually, that's almost why I didn't jump in, because I didn't want to be like, move out of the way, ladies. I'll take care of this.
Step aside, girls. Yes, but it's like he would listen to your voice. Like, you took advantage of the fact that he would listen more to your voice. So, and I love that. I mean, we're working within the system. So when I say a blow, though, like, it just is like, okay, there was a real fear before starting this podcast. Like, I don't want to endure those kinds of stones thrown, and there's going to be a greater chance. But what I don't want more is to miss the chance to play, for self-expression, for creativity, for the joy of using my voice. So it was worth it to me. And so, but what that nugget of peace was like to accept that here's this person that just did this insanely generous thing that I've never done to that level. And they are someone who also like was, throwing name calling and insults and all these sort of things. Like, he's both. And that is the lesson that continually brings peace, because as long as I'm othering, like, oh, this candidate is all evil, right? Or this group of people are all evil. It's like, if I'm othering and sectioning it off and not accepting the contradictions and the paradoxes that are inside me and inside others, like, that's a recipe in my life I've experienced for unhappiness. The truth is holding it all. It's all in, it all belongs. And to accept it, because it's like, if I can accept this person who, I didn't like that they chose name calling. I didn't like that they chose some of the strategies that they did to get their point across. But if I just make them the demon and the other and the evil person, it's like that when I get in these cycles of, I have like cycles of mental health where I'm just really, really down, really, really discouraged, really in a dark place. And the very thing I struggle when I'm in that dark, dark place is I cannot see a crack of light in myself. And it's like, by practicing seeing it in him, I can also practice seeing it in me. So that to me is, and that is so, I wish I could the perfectionist in me wishes I could summarize that all more succinctly, but it's the acceptance of what is.
I don't think it needs to be succinct because you need nuance. It's not black and white. There's lots of layers and things. So I think it's appropriate that it's not an easy answer.
It's not an easy answer. Yeah.
Somebody's not the sum of all. Someone's not
the sum total.
Of one event that they, or one comment or one whatever it is.
Action.
You need all the words.
Oh, yes. That reminds me of the end of Just Mercy. He says, none of us are as bad as the worst things we have done. And it's like, it takes time. You're right. I like your encouragement of that because you're encouraging me to think more. Like it takes time to think deeply and to think about both sides and to not just section off of one right, one good, one bad. So
it takes a discipline too, because it's easy just to, you're driving down the road, somebody cuts you off and that guy's a jerk. Like it takes more effort to, I don't know.
To get the compassionate backstory that he's on his way to see his dying wife and this is his last chance to kiss her goodbye.
Right.
Sorry.
Something like that.
I just like
when it could be. I mean, it's.
Yes, I know. I laughed at myself because when Zach would get mad at people when he was learning to drive, I would always create this like really dramatic, like compassion-inducing story of why that person cut him off. I couldn't help it. Okay. Can I end with this quote? Do you want to hear how awesome it is? It's from Gerald May in The Wisdom. Oh, I didn't give you a chance.
I was going to say yes.
Could you see? I was already like grabbing the microphone. Like it's my favorite part to like tell a story and then end with a quote. So I was embracing did you see how I embraced the microphone?
I saw it.
Okay. So the wisdom of the wilderness, the wisdom of the wilderness. Okay. So there's so many more stories I could tell too, but I'm going to go right to the quote because we're getting towards the end.
It wouldn't be the first time we've ended a podcast and then had 4 more stories after it.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
That's what editing's for.
That's what editing's for. Okay. I'm going up with the wisdom of the wilderness. Okay. So I'm ravenous for, these stories, these people, these places, these experiences that incorporate all of that, not spiritually bypassing the hard stuff, but digging into it all and incorporating it all because it in my own life has been so healing. So this book, is by Gerald May. And when I heard a story about him that I just loved, that Richard Rohr and him were walking down the street and 1 minute they're talking about Julian of Norwich. And the next minute he tells this like off-color joke that like pastors shouldn't tell. And the next moment he starts launching into talking about John of the Cross, a Christian mystic. And he was like, that is who, he just loved this like ability for him to like be like so authentic and so real and so just human, but also so longing for this spiritual side. And I loved that mix. And so, okay. So here's his quote. He was a psychologist. He was famous for blending both theology and spirituality and doing it really well, and psychology. So he said, in my psychiatric practice, how many times have I helped people to cope? How many times have I helped them tame the power of their emotions? Maybe it wasn't at all helpful. Okay, let me just stop right there. First of all, the fact that Gerald May, at the end of his career, would be willing to consider what he did was not helpful shows such humility to me. Like, I absolutely love that. And such like checking of the ego. So he goes on to say, maybe that was not helpful. He was like, I assisted with patients uncovering their often buried emotions. He said, what I seldom did, I seldom encouraged them to savor the life juice of the feelings themselves, the rich, dark love nature of grief, the warming fire of anger, the subtle luminosity of loneliness, the pure gut-driving power of sexual desire, and the exquisite clarity of fear. We were taught to get rid of pain before we knew what it taught us. To cope, you have to separate. You make it your antagonist, your enemy, a warfare-like stance. Wild, untamed emotions are full of life spirit, being itself, vibrant energy. I'm a girl who sometimes struggles to get the energy I need. And I am really interested in leaning into this because I am a master at spiritually bypassing this tough stuff. Continuing the quote, our emotions don't have to be acted out either, nor do they have to be tamed. They are a part of our inner wilderness. They can just be what they are. They can just be what they are. Oh Lord, save me from coping. Help me accept that the emotions are what they are, that my inner wilderness is what it is. Help me to join it and use that energy in the right direction and not separate it out from myself. Help me be with it and in it and not apart from it. And show me the way of savoring what makes me alive and not trying to control it away. Do the dead cringe at my dismissal of what is a sure sign that I am alive?
Like an antidote to the world chased by the fears it gave you. Oh, but you're still a young spirit. I know